Hola a todos, espero que se encuentren bien. Today we are going to review the CSEC Spanish paper 2, May, June 2015. So let us get right into it. All right, here we are. So of course, the first section is going to be the situations, and there's no need, of course, for me to read the instructions because you already know them. So let's get into these situations. A, you wish to request a favor from your teacher. Write a note making the request. So I use the verb poder and the infinitive. Puede ayudarme con la tarea. Of course, I would have used usted. If I had used to, I would have utilized puedes. Puedes ayudarme con la tarea. But because I see a teacher as a person in authority, I use usted. So, puede ayudarme con la tarea. B, write a note inviting a friend to an activity stating the date on which it will be held. Okay? So, you have to invite the friend and you have to state the date. So, those are the two pieces of information that you need. Estás invitado a mi fiesta el 8 de noviembre. So you see, I have the date and I have the invitation. So of course I could have said estás invitada if I were talking to a female, but I chose to invite a male friend. C, you have missed your friend's birthday. Write the note of apology you send stating how you will make up for this. So you need two pieces of information. You need to apologize and you need to say how you will make up for it. So, lo siento mucho. I'm very sorry. And how am I going to make up for it? Voy a comprarte un reloj. So, I am sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm going to buy a watch for you. I'll buy you a watch. Just give me a second. I have to plug in my charger. Okay. So yes, I'm very sorry. I'm going to buy you a watch. So I apologize, and I stated how I will make up for it. D, you have lost an item. Write the note you put on the school's lost and found board, informing of your loss with a description of the item. So we need to inform the public of our loss, and we need to describe the item. So, he perdido mi cartera. That's the first piece of information. That's how I inform the public, and by public I mean the school, of course. And then I have to describe it. Y es azul y mediana. Of course, mediana because cartera is feminine. I have lost my wallet and it is blue and medium sized. E, Alejandro is seeking your opinion on a particular issue or issue. Write the email you received from him. So he's asking for your opinion. So you have to of course there are multiple ways you can do this, but you have to ask for his opinion. So how do we do that? So we have to ask for his opinion on a particular issue. So you have to be specific in that regard. ¿Qué piensas de mi hermana? What do you think of my sister? So that's one of the ways that I could ask for an opinion. You could also use the verb creer. You could use opinar. So you have options, but it is important that you study the situation carefully because sometimes the situation may be from your perspective or someone else's perspective. So you have to pay attention to that. This situation is from Alejandro's perspective. Mhm. So this is what he would ask you. ¿Qué piensas de mi hermana? Mhm. F, you have to meet your cousin. Write the email you send suggesting the time that the two of you can meet. Right? So, deberíamos encontrarnos a las 8. We should meet up at 8 o'clock. You could also use reunirse. Yeah, that also means to meet up. Mhm. So that's the time. Deberíamos encontrarnos a las 8. Mhm. G, your friend has invited you to lunch at a particular restaurant. Write the email you send to your friend expressing your preference with a reason. So you have to obviously provide your preference in restaurant and why. So, prefiero Champers porque es más lujoso. I prefer Champers because it is more luxurious. Mhm. That's right. And H, not an H, as if H is the last one. Write the card you sent to your Aunt Rita or Aunt Rita, expressing gratitude and mentioning something she did for you. So you have to thank her, and then you have to mention what she did for you. So there are two pieces of information. Gracias por comprarme un móvil. Thanks for buying me a cell phone. Mhm. You could also use the verb agradecer, but obviously that's a little more complex. I, your sister overseas is unable to visit for the Christmas vacation as planned. Write the email your mother sends to her expressing how she feels and suggesting an alternative arrangement. So how does the mom feel? Well, you have to say how the mom feels. Me siento triste, pero, and then of course afterwards I will mention the alternative arrangement. Pero puedes venir durante las vacaciones de Pascua. Mhm. I feel sad, but you can come during the Easter vacation. So that is the alternative arrangement. Mhm. And J, this is actually the last situation because, as you know, there are 10. A member of your sports club has broken one of the rules. Write the note that the coach leaves for him or her, warning her of the consequences of the offense. So, what are the consequences? Vas a recibir una suspensión. Mhm. You're going to receive a suspension. Mhm. That's right. I just need to double check if it is suspension with an S or a C. But of course, I'll double check that. Mhm. Okay, so that's section 1. Section 2, the informal letter. Mhm. So what is the situation? You participated in an annual competition. Write a letter to your Mexican friend about the experience. Be sure to include what kind of competition you entered, how participants normally prepare for this competition, what you learned from the experience, what competitions you plan to enter next year, and why. Okay? So this is the content. Mhm. So let's see what I wrote. Of course, we have to start by putting the date in the right-hand corner. Viernes 4 de abril de 2026. Mhm. And of course, I'm writing this, it said, to a Mexican friend, so just invent a name. Querido Pablo. Hola, ¿qué tal? Espero que estés bien al igual que tu familia. So these are expressions that you can use to start any letter. So those are routine, right? Hello, how are you doing? I hope that you and your family are well. Now I introduce the purpose. Te escribo para contarte sobre el concurso en el que participé. I'm writing you to tell you about the competition in which I participated, right? Or the competition that I participated in. Okay, fue un concurso de baile y aunque no gané, lo pasé muy bien. It was a dance competition and although our dance contest, and although I did not win, I had a great time. So that's the first cue that I responded to. What kind of competition you entered? So that's the first cue. That's there. How participants normally prepare for this competition? So let's look for that. Normalmente, los participantes llevan meses practicando sus bailes. Okay, that is it. So normally, participants spend months practicing their dances, right? Nadie quiere cometer errores el día del concurso. No one wants to make mistakes on the day of the competition or contest. Algunas personas practican sus bailes durante 8 horas al día. So this is still continuing along the same point, or continuing on the same point, because this is talking about how persons normally prepare. Some persons practice their dances for 8 hours a day. La preparación me enseñó que los ganadores son personas que están dispuestas a trabajar más duro que los demás. So the preparation showed me or taught me that winners are persons that are willing to work harder than the others. And that is true. And that's another cue that I responded to, what you learned from your experience. That is correct. Por lo tanto, necesito esforzarme un poco más. Therefore, I need to exert myself a bit more or push myself a bit more. So that's also a lesson that I learned from my experience. So we can say that we have responded to the first, second, and third cues. All right. So let's continue. Sin embargo, el próximo año voy a participar en 2 carreras y un concurso de natación porque estoy en buena forma y creo que nadie va a entrenar como yo. However, next year I'm going to participate in 2 races and a swimming contest because I am in good shape and I believe that no one is going to train like I'm going to, right? No one's going to train like I'm going to. And that responds to the last cue, which is what competitions you plan to enter next year and why. So let's close off. Si no gano, nunca vuelvo a competir. That's a bit extreme, but if I do not win, I will never compete again. Espero verte pronto. I hope to see you soon. Y quizás podamos participar en uno de estos concursos juntos. And maybe we can participate in one of these competitions together. And of course, I have my closing. Un fuerte abrazo, strong hug, Miguel, which would be the person writing the letter. or the person who wrote the letter. So my word count, 139. Muy bien. Good. So that's the second section. All right. Section 3, the dialogue. So what is the situation? Your class has traveled to a Spanish-speaking country on an annual educational trip, and the host has organized a meet and greet activity. Responses to all of the cues listed must be included in the dialogue. 1, greetings and introductions. 2, purpose of the visit to the country. 3, how you and your classmates work to raise the funds to make the trip possible. 4, information about your school. 5, what you and your classmates will do to ensure that the objective of the trip is met. Now, when it comes to the dialogue, you know that you must read ahead in order to understand what should be stated, okay? So let's start. Amelia. Hola, bienvenido a mi país y a mi escuela. Me llamo Amelia. So it's obvious from the first line of dialogue that you're a male because she said bienvenido, and which means welcome, of course. So you're a male. That's the first thing. So she says, hello, welcome to my country and my school. My name is Amelia. Well, that's the English pronunciation, Amelia, right? So to know what I am to say, I need to skip to see what she says afterwards. El gusto es mío. So the pleasure is mine. Dime, tell me, ¿cuál es el propósito de esta visita a mi país? So what's the purpose of this visit to my country? So obviously, if she says the pleasure is mine, then you have to say how much of a pleasure it is to meet her. So you basically have to introduce yourself to her and express that. So I said, muchas gracias, Amelia. Es un placer conocerte. It is a pleasure to meet you. So this first line in her response afterwards would tell you that you have to say that it was a pleasure to meet her, right? So es un placer conocerte. It's a pleasure to meet you. Or you could have even said mucho gusto. That would also work. But you have to indicate that it was a pleasure to meet her, right? That is a key piece of information, right? So continuing, she asks, ¿cuál es el propósito de esta visita a mi país? So what's the purpose of this visit to my country? Okay, to know what I am to say, I have to skip again and see what she says afterwards. Fabuloso. Debe ser muy costoso para ustedes, ¿verdad? Fabulous. It must be very expensive for you, right? So if she says that, then, and she says fabulous at the start, we have to mention the purpose, because remember in the last response, she asked us what is the purpose of the trip. So we have to give her know we have to tell her what is the purpose of this trip. ¿Cuál es el propósito de esta visita a mi país? So, queremos aprender mucho español y conocer varios lugares de interés. We want to learn a lot of Spanish and get to know or discover various places of interest. So that's what we would have to put there. The purpose of the visit. Okay, continuing. So after she asks if the trip was costly or expensive, what does she say afterwards? She says, ¿Y qué hicieron ustedes para obtener esa cantidad de dinero? So here, you would have to confirm basically that it was expensive, right? You don't say what you did because she did not ask you that, at least not yet. So you just confirm that it was expensive because remember in the response or in the per response, she said that it must be costly, so she's assuming that it must be expensive. So you just confirm that. However you choose to confirm that will be fine. So I said, sí, fue costoso, pero pudimos recaudar fondos suficientes. Yes, it was expensive, but we were able to collect or gather sufficient funds or raise sufficient funds. Now we have to say what we did. So, ¿y qué hicieron qué hicieron ustedes para obtener esa cantidad de dinero? Right? So this is what she asks us. And then we look down, we have to scroll down. Me parece mucho trabajo. ¿Puedes hablarme un poco de tu escuela? So this is the key here. When she says, me parece mucho trabajo, that seems like a lot of work, right? So then we have to mention what we did to raise the funds, right? Because the question asks how did we raise the money? And yeah, so organizamos fiestas y limpiamos los coches de los padres. So we organized parties and cleaned the parents' cars. Remember, she says, me parece mucho trabajo. ¿Puedes hablarme un poco de tu escuela? So she asks me to talk a bit about my school. So we skip to see what she says afterwards. Interesante. ¿Qué esperan aprender de este viaje? So here now we have the freedom to give details about the school, whatever details you choose. So I said, nuestra escuela es privada y pequeña. Our school is private and small, ya que, considering that, tiene 50 alumnos de 6 a 16 años, given that it has 50 students from 6 to 16 years old. So those would be the details that I provided. So you can give whatever details. You could describe the school, talk about the teachers, whatever the case may be. But you have to give brief details about the school here, right? Okay, continuing. So she asks, interesante. Well, she says interesante, and then she asks, ¿qué esperan aprender de este viaje? Interesting. What do you expect or what do you hope to learn from this trip? So you have to skip down to see what she says afterwards. Pero claro, esto no será todo. ¿Qué más van a hacer durante su visita? So whatever you say, it cannot be everything, right? Because she says, pero claro, esto no será todo. But of course, that will not be all, right? That will not be everything. This will not be everything. So I said, esperamos aprender español, because remember, that's one of the two objectives of the trip. And then she proceeds to ask, ¿qué más van a hacer durante su visita? What more are you going to do during your visit? So we have to skip to see what she says. Fantástico, fantastic. Así estarán seguros de verlo todo y regresarán a su país hablando español perfectamente. ¿Te gustaría volver a mi país? Fantastic. That way, you will be sure to see it all, and you will return to your country speaking Spanish perfectly. Would you like to return to my country? So, of course, that's a mouthful. But what she's saying is that she's giving you the clue as to what you would have to say. So she says that way you will be certain to see it all and return to your country speaking Spanish. See it all. So what does she mean by see it all? Meaning the places of interest, etc., landmarks and whatnot. And then she says, uh, you will return to your country speaking Spanish perfectly. So anything that will help you to learn Spanish, you have to mention. Because, you have some leeway with this. So I said, vamos a visitar algunos sitios de interés, como los museos y las catedrales, para aprender sobre lugares interesantes en español. So you see, you'll be able to see it all and return to your country speaking Spanish perfectly. So you have to mention the part about engaging with the Spanish language. And I did that when I talked about learning about the places of interest in Spanish. And then at the end, she asks, ¿Te gustaría volver a mi país? Would you like to return to my country? What does she say at the end? Estupendo. Hasta el próximo año. She says, wonderful. Until next year, or see you next year, right? Now, here, the last part gives you an indication as to what you have to say, because she says, see you next year. So obviously, in my response, I would have said, we want to return next year, or anything along those lines. So, por supuesto que sí, queremos volver el año próximo. So, yeah, of course, yes, of course. We want to return next year. Good. And my word count was 82. Well within the limit. Okay, muy bien. Section 4. The reading comprehension passage. So let's read the passage and then answer the questions. The interview. La entrevista. La rutina de Javier es afeitarse, desayunar y salir de casa para comprar el periódico para buscar trabajo. Hace 3 meses está desempleado. Hoy, 15 de marzo, tuvo entrevista para un puesto de ingeniero. Se puso el traje que llevó el día de su graduación y salió en carro. Había mucho embotellamiento y Javier temía llegar tarde a la cita. Al llegar al aparcamiento del edificio a donde iba, una mujer conducía lentamente delante de él. La mujer tenía mucha dificultad para estacionar su carro y llamó a Javier para que le ayudara. Si no sabe conducir, no debe estar aquí en el aparcamiento, contestó Javier irrespetuosamente. Qué grosero. Finalmente, Javier entró en el edificio, tomó el ascensor y subió al 3er piso, donde una secretaria le acompañó a su entrevista. Al entrar en la oficina, Javier empezó a temblar, nervioso y con ganas de llorar. Se acordó de la experiencia de la mañana. ¡Qué vergüenza! Sentada detrás de la mesa estaba la mujer a quien acababa de insultar en el aparcamiento. Very funny story. All right, so let's look at the questions. A, describe Javier's routine before he leaves home. So as you see, the question is worth 2 marks. So we have to provide 2 pieces of information, and there are 2 pieces of information. So he shaves, which is afeitarse, and desayunar, which is to eat breakfast or to have breakfast. Okay, good. but it says before he leaves home. So everything before salir would be his morning routine. Mhm. Okay, B. Why does Javier buy the newspaper? So he purchases the newspaper para buscar trabajo. Buscar, to look for, so he's looking for a job. Mhm. That's why he purchases the newspaper. See what was significant about March 15th? So it says, hoy, 15 de marzo, tuvo entrevista para un puesto de ingeniero. So today, March 15th, he had an interview for the position of engineer. So he had an interview for that position. So on March 15th, he had a job interview for the position of engineer. Yep. Mhm. So those would be the two pieces of information you would need to provide, right? D, what suit did Javier wear on that day? So it says here, se puso el traje que llevó el día de su graduación. So he put on the suit that he wore on his graduation day. So basically his graduation suit. He wore his graduation suit. Mhm. E, explain why Javier was concerned on this journey. So where is that? Right. Había mucho embotellamiento. Embotellamiento means traffic jams, anything like that. Y Javier temía llegar tarde a la cita. So temer means to fear. So he feared arriving late to the I don't cita could be appointment. Let's say appointment. Or interview. In this case, you mean interview. He feared arriving late to the interview. Mhm. So he was concerned because there was a lot of traffic and he feared that he would arrive late. So those are the two details that you needed to mention, right? F, why did the lady in the parking lot call out to Javier? So where was that mentioned? So al llegar al aparcamiento del edificio a donde iba, so upon arrival, where am I? Right. Al llegar al aparcamiento. So when he arrived at the building where he was going, una mujer conducía lentamente delante de él. So a woman was driving slowly in front of him. La mujer tenía mucha dificultad para estacionar su carro y llamó a Javier para que le ayudara. So she was having a lot of difficulty parking her car, and she called out to Javier to help her. That was the answer. He was, no, F. She wanted Javier to help her park. So that was the reason that she called out to Javier. G, what was Javier's response to the lady? It says, si no sabe conducir, no debe estar aquí en el aparcamiento, contestó. Contestar means to answer or to respond. Javier irrespetuosamente. Mhm. So he was very disrespectful. So his response was that he told her that if she did not know how to drive, she should not have been there in the parking lot. That's so rude, right? Mhm. H, what did Javier do immediately after he entered the building? So, finalmente, Javier entró en el edificio. So, finally, he entered the building. Tomó el ascensor. He took the elevator y subió al tercer piso, donde una secretaria le acompañó a su entrevista. So he took the elevator or the lift and he went to the third floor. So that would be those would be the two pieces of details that were necessary, right? So he took the elevator and went up to the third floor. You don't have to say that the secretary accompanied him to the or escorted him to the interview. No, that part would not be important, at least not then, not there, right? Yes. So I describe Javier's behavior when he entered the office. So what does it say? Al entrar en la oficina, upon entering the office, Javier empezó a temblar. So he began to shake or tremble. Nervioso y con ganas de llorar. So those were three details. He began to shake, he was nervous, and he felt like crying. So those were the three pieces of information. Mhm. He began to shake, he was nervous, and he wanted to cry. Mhm. Tener ganas de means to feel like or to want to do something, right? Mhm. And J, why did Javier behave that way? So this is a question that requires you to make an inference based on what you would have read. So it says here, se acordó de la experiencia de la mañana. Acordarse de means to remember something, right? Qué vergüenza. What a shame. Sentada detrás de la mesa, seated or sitting behind the table, estaba la mujer a quien acababa de insultar en el aparcamiento. Was the woman whom he had just insulted in the parking lot. So the person who is interviewing him happens to be the woman that he insulted. So this is what makes the story so funny, right? So yes, he felt that way because he realized that the lady whom he insulted in the parking lot was also his interviewer. So that's why he behaved that way, because he was embarrassed. He just disrespected his interviewer. I wonder if he got the job or not, though. All right. So this brings us to the end of this paper. All right. Da. Ok. Espero que ustedes hayan disfrutado de este video. Muchas gracias por ver y hasta la próxima.